Alright, well, welcome everyone. This is, I know Dan has previously done an unboxing and all, but since I made one of our bets for the year that Shatterpoint is going to get big, I figured we'd actually unbox it, take a look at it, and discuss a little bit about early thoughts on all of this. As we go along, as we get to the point of actually building the models, that's going to be the next one that we do as well. But we are going to start with this. It is a giant box. So I know other people have done this already, but I played most of the different games at either FFG, which is the ones who had these sort of licenses in the past, or now AMG. I played pretty much all their games. I played quite a few. And at least starter-wise, this is an absolutely giant box. Comes with a ton of miniatures, which is great. So for this game, for anyone who is reasonably uninitiated, Shatterpoint is a skirmish level on 3x3 game. For this, the idea is you bring two squads. The squad has a primary, secondary, and support unit. Some of the supports are 2 models and all. That's why if you count up the number of models here, you're going to get a couple extras just because of that. Say like the B1s, when you take them, you actually get 2 bases and things like that. But this is a skirmish game. Think MCP in terms of you got some movement tools, you got some range tools, you have an alternating style activation, but after that, it really does start to vary. So we're going to take a look at this, and we're going to give some initial thoughts on both what we see, as well as just the game in general. Alright, let's crack into this thing. So, we aren't important enough for AMG to send us review copies of things, so don't actually currently have a review copy of anything. So, sorts with their little piece. Oh yeah, this is something they mentioned that they were doing. So for this, the idea is it's art backdrops that they're going to do on some of these other ones. So that way, if you are taking pictures of any of your models, you can actually use these. I actually have a light box, although I don't necessarily have a background, so I might try it out just to get a feel and see how it does. So let's take a look at what they did for a few of these things. That's not bad, because I am building actually currently probably about another week, I'm starting to print terrain for a Tatooine style board. Maybe on the other side. I do have some pieces of Hoth. I have a lot more for an indoor board, but Hoth as well. Alright. We have obligatory tokens. Now, I know for at least myself, I've already started looking at, since I have a 3D printer now, spots where I can 3D print holders for tokens or purchase them. There's already a few. I think I've seen one or so on Etsy. If you print yourself, there's ones on Colts 3D. There's a lot of other people coming out with them as well. Because your other option, obviously, is you could get, a lot of times they use like fishing boxes. So you can get them, I get them from like Dick's Sporting Goods or Walmart or any of those sort of stores. But it's literally to hold usually fishing lures and things like that. Actually, I have a few over here. Actually, one like this is literally something I picked up about 3 or 4 days ago. One for my Bushido, another one for, I think it was Conquest tokens, another one, I think I just picked up another one because I just might need it sooner or later. For now, it's going to hold one of these. These are actually probably going in here, but in the future, I'm going to get a different one. Because like I said, I have a printer now, so I want to print my own. We have core rules. I will preface by saying there's already been updates to the core rules. I know cover, for one thing, has been updated. Cover before was this, much more of that sort of flashlight approach. If part of you is covered when I kind of shine fully, then you get cover. Now, as of the timing of this video, to get cover, you have to be both in cover, but you also need hunker tokens. So be aware they do give you the rules. This is enough to go through to get a feel for the game and to get an idea of how everything plays. But never use the rulebook out of a box to truly learn the rules. Realize there's going to be updates and changes, so you're going to want to actually take a look and see what they do. But the basic ideas are going to be there. Also, keep in mind, this is a brand new game, so rules updates and rules changes are going to happen really fast. Like I said, we had almost day one-ish style patches, if you want to think about it that way. And we're going to get more of that as we go along. So they do these games, AMG as well as FFG before, they do them as sort of living rule books. So keep an eye on that, look for changes, and don't be surprised if you get them somewhat frequently. Alright, we have terrain. The back of the box shows us what all the terrain was. Terrain and bases. Nice. This is a game where they have absolutely said that you want multiple levels. So we can see on this that they have a bunch of gantries. If you are someone either who has Legion terrain or is printing their own terrain. I'm printing from Legion files right now while I wait for a few different makers to both come out with files a little bit more appropriate to this set, that look a little more like the set, or from just other sources. I know AMG has put out an extra thing of terrain, which I'm pretty sure is just more of the core terrain, which is good. I might at some point get that as well, but for right now I'm going to work on a few other things. But this is a game where you want multiple levels. They said that's a big facet, being moving up and down and those sort of pieces, and the rules support that as a lot. So if you have, say, a piece of terrain, a building, and you have a ladder on the side, if you're on the bottom of the ladder, if that's where you move to, you get to, for free, essentially go up to a range 1 on top of the ladder. So ingresses and all of that is a big facet of this game. So if all you have is a lot of, say, flat Legion-style terrain, this box having a lot of gantry pieces is really going to help, but you will probably need to expand out from there. They obviously have options, but there's other ones as well. So underneath is probably all of the miniatures, yes. And a big old bag. Oh, more terrain. That's fine. And then they start actually giving us some miniatures, which is what I'm probably going to work on first, obviously. So, taking a look at their miniatures were always very good. The one thing I've heard some people say is that when you take a look at the lightsabers and all, that they're a little flimsy. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest, yes, it is a little flimsy. You're going to have to be careful with it. I'm personally going to magnetize my bases and do it that way. So with the magnetization, I'm not quite as concerned with it, but that is absolutely a concern in general. So just be careful with however you store these. Actually, yeah, here's a bunch of the other arms. If you do look, they are pretty thin. So I do have some concerns about things breaking, but if they do, I'll fix them or I'll replace them over time with maybe some little metal rod or something like that. I see parts of B1. So I, for anyone who doesn't know, I have a Legion Army. I have CIS. I have assembled and painted probably about 60 B1s, I would say, would be about my guess. And in that, I've gotten pretty good with B1s. Looking at this, they don't look any more difficult to assemble, though I will say B1s for a lot of people are very difficult to assemble. They actually did change a few things front and back now. It's not one solid piece. That's the biggest difference that I see, because you can see the little divots here. For assembling a B1 or a difficult model, something like this, my absolute suggestion is use plastic glue. Don't use super glue. Biggest reason why, and maybe when I start assembling this, I'll show some of this. Here's the biggest reason, or some of the biggest issues. Let's see. Yep, there we go. So here's an arm. And you're going to notice that the bottom part of that arm, you need to connect it to the other arm. Maybe it's this one here. I'm not sure which one it is. So the biggest piece that people have issues with is actually getting that connection to go. Here's the Star Wars Legion B1. So, difficulties with assembling these sort of guys is mostly related to the arms. So the issue is if you use super glue, at least the issue that I find when I use super glue, is that super glue takes a moment, but it's a pretty instant bond. So you have 3 connection points, the 2 arms and the hand underneath, and it essentially hooks into his hand. So this little bit of a knuckle here, sorry for the swing there, this little bit of a knuckle here is actually where it occurs, right in there. What I found when I started with super glue for this, and people probably find this with a lot of their models, is that you're trying to hold these 2 parts and hold this, and you're running out of hands, and did you give the legs enough time to fully dry? Because if not, as you're starting to squeeze, a leg might pop out, all of that. Plastic glue alleviates all these problems. You will have to wait longer for the legs. So sub-assembly is very useful. Attach all the legs, come back, work on some other models, then try it again. What I did for this, though, you put a little plastic glue on essentially on the 2 arms, let them hang out for a little bit, and then usually I would do just one, but you could actually do both. And then after a few minutes, once the plastic glue has gotten tacky enough where it holds, but you're still able to move it around, that is when I try to connect this hand. That's when I squeeze it appropriately and push to get the right angle. The biggest problem with this sort of stuff is getting the right angle. The reason that's such a problem is because with super glue, since it's going to attach so fast, if you're holding the one and trying to push the other, it might actually already start to solidify and you're not able to bend and turn. Because what you're actually going to need to do is this arm might have to come up a little bit more, or if that's a shoulder joint, actually turn out or turn over. Plastic glue lets you do that. Super glue really doesn't. But I do like the look of all the models. I have not actually painted any clone type stuff before, so I'm looking forward to doing that. For whites, I like painting whites. Remember, if you really want to paint white, you should do just very little white. It should be off whites and those sort of colors. Actual true white should be your stark contrast color. Speaking of contrast, you can always use contrast paints as well. I haven't used the one for white. Maybe I'll give it a shot, but I just don't personally own it. I might need it for some of my Tengu for Bushido. Plenty more models, plenty more people, little tiny shields. I do like painting shields. That's a lot of fun. For these guys, I think I'm going to probably go non-metallic metals. Usually for large-scale models, I don't like the look of metals. If you do, that's great. But I just personally don't, and I like to be able to sort of challenge myself that way. For my MCP, I did comic style. I'm going to probably do comic style bases, but I don't think the models I'm necessarily going to do is comic style. Maybe. I have to start building them and then see how I feel. Comic style I like, but sometimes I absolutely can be a little bit of annoyance putting it all together. We have more sprues of stuff, more building. So a lot of terrain pieces, which is great. I know box-wise, it shows here all the terrain that it makes. There is actually a piece over here, they kind of don't quite show it, but there is quite a bit of terrain. So that is probably going to be next week's goal, is to get that terrain put together with some of the terrain I have and actually be able to start showing this off. Though I'm going to do a Learn to Play series, which I'll use their terrain. And then they like to do this. If you think something's missing, always look under pieces. This is where you get all your cards. To give you dice, my biggest suggestion to you, get another thing of dice. This isn't going to be enough. Realistically, it's not. It's enough to kind of get you by, but the last thing you want is to, you have 8 of, say, the attack dice. So attack dice are in gray, defense dice are in blue. If you ever had to roll more than 8, then you're having to remember what you rolled in other ones if you were very successful. Also, if, there's either multiple pools or something like that, I find I always go with extra dice because you can't go wrong with more of them. You're probably going to need them. Struggle tracker. The basic premise in the game, for anyone who's not aware, is that you're going to start here at 0. Each side's goal is to get to the end. There will be some momentum tokens that go down when different effects happen. Currently, effects like injuring one of the other side's characters, or at the end of your turn, if your opponent still has the cube, the tracker, on their side, and you don't, then you start getting momentum. But the idea is this is the push and pull back and forth. Here's all those cubes I talk about. So you have your different momentum tokens, and you have your token for where the actual struggle is. When you reach the end of your tracker, which could be where your momentum token is, you win that round. It's best of 3 played. Let's crack open some cards. So there's currently one mission. That is the big downside, as I see. There will be more missions, of course. I'm sure they're going to do quite a few more, but they start with one. So the mission that they started with is shifting priorities. It tells us how to set up the board, tells us how to make this work. And what we get is that in the first struggle, if you pull, you'll notice there's a few first struggle cards. You're going to randomly pull one, and this tells you which objectives are active. So if you look at your grid, these are the objectives that matter. The other objectives are essentially turned off. So it's a 3x3 grid of objectives. When you are done that first struggle, then you go to the second struggle. So in between struggles, you don't reset the game board. You don't pull all the models back. Essentially, you reset your tracker. You do a few other little bits and pieces. But then you just go on to the next part. And what we see from the next part is that there's 2 different maps. From these maps, it tells you what ones are the active pieces. And the fact that there's 2 maps comes from the fact that whoever lost the last struggle gets to choose which one. So maybe based off of their position, maybe one of them is more advantageous than the other. We'll get into a little bit about why they have the different symbols in the future. It has to do with which one is essentially more important and all, but we'll get to that. I don't want to go too much into rules for this. We got a bunch of these. The only problem I see, and then they have some of them for the third as well. The only problem I see so far is that for these, you only have one mission so far. I think that's fine for a while, but the reason I got out of X-Wing is because for the longest while, X-Wing was just destroy each other. I wanted something more. We get their cards. So this is your deck. The idea is you would put your deck together, shuffle it up, you top deck, that tells you who activates. So if you pull this, then Anakin's going to go. I'm fine with that. I don't mind random activation. I'm someone who enjoy playing bolt action and other games like that that do random. I can see why it's a little bit of a sticking point for some people, though. The other key is that you do have Shatterpoint cards. If you pull that, anyone on your team gets to go, even if they just went, even if they haven't went yet. So you do get some control on that. We have character cards. We'll go through more anatomy of these, but this is essentially points for building your squad, force points. You have all your various rules. If you have one, or if there's two symbols there, 2 units. And you have all your special rules here. So this tells you everything that this model does. If you see the symbol next to it, then it's a force power. You got to spend force to do it. Some of them are active. Some of them are reactive. So it all just depends on what they do. We're going to do a bigger deep dive into all of this in terms of actually learning how to play later. With that, you also then have your weapons and all. So it is a separate card. Some of these cards, like Ahsoka's, are two-sided. So she can depend on which lightsaber fighting style that she's doing. What we see then is your tracker. So much like a game, Arena Rex is the only other one I can think of, although, and I will probably do some stuff for that as well. It's a net success game. So I look at all my successes, crits, counters, all that kind of stuff. We look at your successes and we take the net of that. If I'm the attacker and I have a net result, however many net results, that's how far down this I get to move. You get to go up to the full distance. You can't cycle back or anything. So if I had 2 net successes, I can do 2. If I got to 4, then I have a choice. I could split one branch or the other. We see this one, it splits almost immediately. The one difficulty I think so far with this game is the amount of symbols. It will be fine in time, so you know what these do. But for the moment, I am absolutely going to be keeping hopefully a piece of the rule book with this or a cheat sheet on hand to remember all these symbols do. Because I play a variety of games, so in many other games this is a push. This one looks very similar, so the question, okay, which one is that exact symbol? It's the concern of getting them wrong. We can see they tell you how many dice you have on attack, on defense. You get specializations on attack as defense as well, and we'll go into more of what that does. So that is the contents of the box. All right, so thoughts about all of this in this game in general. 1, it's always exciting when we can get a new miniatures game or board game or any sort of hobby things into our hands. Specifically, more lately, I've been doing a lot more miniatures gaming than board gaming. So I am very excited about this set. I'm very excited about the game in general. I think the models, so we'll talk some pluses and minuses, or at this moment, like I said, I haven't really got into playing it yet. Watched some battle reports, read through the rules, so I have a reasonably comfortable understanding of the game. Although I find for myself, at least, I don't fully feel confident with a miniatures game until I actually sit down and play it. I can read through the rules a bunch, I can watch videos, but until I actually sit down and do the actions myself, there's a little bit of an uncomfortableness with it, or realizing that maybe I didn't quite interpret something, or here's a case that I didn't notice that suddenly came up. That thing doesn't really happen in board games. I find for myself with board games, I'm fully confident with those almost immediately. But for miniatures, usually I actually got to try it out. Actually, later today, I'm probably playing some Bushido, and I'm probably going to see the same thing happen there. Read through the rules quite a few times. I'm going to start moving models and realize that there's something I'm just not quite sure of. So, positives at this moment. 1, there's a lot of stuff in this box. You do get a lot of miniatures. You get a lot of really good-looking miniatures. They put all their little bits around the outside as well, so you can take a look at all of those. I'm going to be, like I said, painting them up. My goal is to paint them up this week. I would like to get all of them done. Like I said, I don't think I'm going to do comic style. I'm going to do comic style bases most likely. Maybe not. I might do more realistic, but I haven't truly decided. But I might do that. Also because the bases are reasonably flat, so rather than building them up, I kind of like that as a way to do it. So I think the models are great. I think the scale is nice. I like when my skirmish games are in a little bit bigger of a scale. Since you have very few models, if they scale up a little bit, they read nicely. The difference between this and, say, like a 30K. In 30K, I might have 60, 70 or more things on the board. So I want them in a useful scale, a little bit smaller, so that way I can actually work with them. Whereas when I'm looking at something like this, since I'm only going to have what, 8 so models on the board, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. We don't have tons and tons of releases out yet, but it's about 4 models per team. You get 2 teams, it's about 8 models. If I'm only having 8 models and you only have 8 models, scale them up a little bit. Same idea with MCP. So the overall idea of the game I really like. I like this idea of the struggle tracker, this sort of back and forth push. Some of the battle reports I've watched it just kind of going right back and forth. I like the catch-up mechanics that if it's staying on my side at the end of your turn, so you weren't able to score enough points to pull it back towards yourself, that you start getting momentum. We're going to make the game a little bit, I don't want to say easier, but easier to catch up for your side. If it stays in the middle, I think we both get one, at least at the time of this recording. That very well. Be aware, any rules I say, some things might change. I like the amount of terrain they put in the box. It is not enough for a full game. It's probably about half of what you need, but they do sell some separate boxes, or if you have some terrain yourself, or, if you happen to either have printed, have old Legion terrain, we want to pick up more of their stuff to match it nicely. There's also a lot of makers out there who are making a lot of great terrain. I'll put, if any of it is out, the ones I've been looking at the time of this video, I will put that down there. If not, I'll update the video in the future with that information. Those are the positives. For negatives or concerns, maybe it's not fair to say negative because I don't know it well enough, but concerns. One of the biggest concerns that I have, that's not too big, 2 big concerns. 3. Let's go with 3. 1, there will be more missions in the future, but right now this is only mission. I'm curious to see what other missions will look like. Are other missions going to be another sort of grid and the way you're highlighting things are different? Is it a completely different setup? What does another mission mean? I think that's the biggest thing is I don't know what it means yet. Now, they might have talked about some of this, but even at that case, until it's out, it's not that I don't believe it, but until it's out, anything is theoretically fair game in my mind. They could really change what they do. They could have had an idea. Ooh, we saw, we plan to do a mission like this. Oh, players are saying this. Okay, let's scrap that. Let's change it all around. So it all very well may change. So I do have concerns about there only being 1 mission. I have some concerns about when the new missions are going to come out. My hope is that it's either come out in a kit that they just didn't tell us there's new missions in, or that maybe they'll release some online, something to get some other variability in here. I think it's going to be good for a while, but I think if you get 20, 30 games in, if you're more like an X-Wing player, you might be fine with it. Someone more like me, I'm going to want a little bit of other variety. Now, some of that variety is going to come from models. Like I'm actually over there, I can see it from here. I have twice the Pride Squad pack. That's the one with Count Dooku in it. So I think changing up who is in my list and what I'm bringing is going to greatly change that as well. But I want more missions. So I do have some concerns about how long it's going to be until we get another mission. One of the other concerns that I have is the amount of activations you're going to get. So, like I said, I haven't played yet, but from everything I've heard from people who have played. So, here is my deck plus, let me grab a Shatterpoint card to mimic this. Okay, so here's my deck. My deck is, say in this case, 7 cards out of the core set. So I got 7 cards here. I shuffle them up, boom, I draw a card, I see who gets to go. I pull the Shatterpoint, boom, someone gets to go again. I have heard that in general, you're not getting through this deck that many times. It seems like in a normal 3-struggle game, I'm hearing reports of 2 times. Sometimes not even 2 times. Some people are saying, oh, no, I went through like 3 times and we weren't quite done yet. So it's varying, of course. But it seems like if both players are very purposeful with what they're doing, and this is a tactical game, and I do like that aspect. I like the fact that when you take your activation, I don't mind the randomization. I really don't. Because that means that I don't always get to know when I activate the model. That means I want to put most of my models in tactical positions. That means there is some abilities some models have that will give me things to do with the other models as well. I don't mind that aspect. I do have a little bit of a concern of how it's going to feel if I only get through this deck, say, 1.5 times. So if, say, Ahsoka, if she's like the character I really want to work with, she's having fun, I love her, and she only goes like 2, maybe 3 times in the entire game, where maybe someone else, Anakin or Rex or whoever it may be in this pack or in the future, maybe they only go like once. Maybe I don't use their Shatterpoint. So if I don't even get through 2 full iterations, maybe that model went once, when my other models went 2, maybe one of them went 3 times, all of that. So I'm curious of how that's going to feel. I think a lot of people Obviously, so we're going to compare this to other games, especially games that AMG makes. So we think of, say, Marvel Crisis Protocol. Every model gets to go every round. So the game is split into 6 rounds. All your models go, all my models go. Boom, we go to another round. It is a back and forth alternating activation, but I get to go, you all go. Boom, we're done. When you think of, say, Legion, same sort of idea. My whole side goes, your whole side goes. It is alternate activation, but the round's not over till we've all went. Boom, we go to a new round. Everyone gets to go all over again. That's another game with some random activation. Bolt action, another game with random activation. So I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. I think people who play more MCP, and if that's their basis, they're the ones with the issue related to this. I'm not concerned about it, honestly. The big thing in those games, though, and that this game does differently, does well, I believe, is that in those games, let's say it's round 3 in MCP, one of your characters is on their injured side, I go, I knock out your character, they're gone. You never got to use them that round. They've just been removed. In this, if your character is going to get knocked out, they get to activate first and they're knocked out at the end of their activation. So you at least get to use them. So there's never that feeling that you didn't get to use a model. I've absolutely had games in MCP, both for me and against me, where turn 1, maybe not turn 1, maybe you got to use them once, so you got to move them up. I knock them down turn 1, so all you did was move. I knock them out. I have, say, start around turn 2. I remove the character from the board. So all you really did was move. You didn't really necessarily do much of anything with them. So for people who are saying that that's a huge negative, I would like to think they think it's a negative in a variety of these other games. It's always a thing. I played plenty of games of 30k or 40k where all I got to do was put my tank down on the board or my unit down on the board. You went first. You blew them away. They're gone. So it's a negative, but not really. It's a negative if you come from certain miniatures games where that is not necessarily the aspect. But most of them, if you really boil it down, that's a very common thing. So I'm not as concerned as some other people are about that. My third concern is the terrain. I think the terrain they put in this box looks great. I'm very excited to put it together, paint it up. I haven't decided the style or what I want it to match with yet, so we have to see. But it needs a lot of verticality. Personally, in my collection, I don't have a whole lot of terrain right now. I'm printing it. Currently, as we speak, I'm printing Imperial Bunker. The roof of it, actually. The bunker itself printed last night. Actually, it might be done now. I'll have to go check downstairs when I'm done with this. But the verticality you need, if you're someone who comes from Legion or maybe MCP and those sort of fields, you might not have terrain with a sort of verticality. You want gantries and ledges and ladders and all that sort of stuff. So if you don't have it, you're either going to need to get it from them, get it from other sources, make it yourself, print it, whatever it may be. But you're going to want that. They've said that that's a true facet of this game, is having the terrain that goes up. So I think that's something that certain players or play groups may not have a lot of right now. Now, if you and your friends are getting to this game, and you bought a couple cores because you have a core and your friend has a core and stuff like that, you got enough to make a board. But I know for at least myself, I know the one game store I go to, Maplewood Hobby, we have plenty of terrain. We have plenty of stacked terrain like this. Some other stores I go to, or if there's several of us playing, then we might start running short. So the specific types of terrain this game wants to support, I think, is a little bit of a concern for me. I think it will stop being a concern in time, but I know at least for the next little while, I'm going to build up, and until I get to that built up point, there's going to maybe be a little bit of light on the terrain, or not exactly the style that I wanted to see. But alright, so those are that's both an unboxing, some initial thoughts for this game. Overall, very excited about it, very happy to try it out. Assembling it this week, hopefully playing next week, and then shortly after that, start doing some Learn to Play series once this stuff is actually painted up. If you enjoy going through, say, Shatterpoint, any other game, likes, comments, subscribes, all that kind of stuff really does help us out. If you want overviews of other games, like I said, currently playing Bushido, MCP, Battletech, all those sorts of things. If there's any of that stuff you guys want to see, just mention it. Mention it in the comments. Let us know. I know, at least for myself, since I have summer off, I want to start doing more individual content like this, but also group we want to do. We have more battle reports. We're filming some this weekend for a Conquest tournament that we're having. Actually, as soon as this is done, I'm going and starting to set up equipment for tomorrow to make sure we're all set and ready to go. Big thing is let us know the things that you want to see. If you want to help support us, like I said, likes, comments, subscribes are the nice and free way to help us out. Really gets us noticed. The other way, if you want to otherwise, we do have a Patreon. The links are below for this. For that, it's anyone who has the means and likes what we do. If you want to throw us a few bucks to help us out with stuff, that really helps. Currently, we get nothing from any publisher for free, all out of pocket. Even if we ever did, any money coming from that would just go into equipment. Like, I want to start getting some more cameras and just some better equipment to be able to do better things for both your viewing and for our own sake, because we do really enjoy doing this. All right, well, on behalf of everyone here then at the show, has a good hobby, it's a great gaming.